furniture pieces, like so their entire office and recycling facility themselves are made from the garbages. Yeah, and even the clothes. Like at first I was like, okay, the guy in pink, like that's so like not really fashionable. Was the first impression that I had. Like, oh, he looks like a clown, right? But actually, when I heard the explanation of what he was wearing, I was like, oh, you know, I respect that. Yeah, we can actually try that too. You know, some of my friends actually make bags, you know, like the handbags out of their old blue jeans. The blue jeans can be torn, and you know, you cannot wear them anymore because they have so many holes. Or maybe you like the holes, but you know, maybe you don't. If you don't like them, then you cut it and then mix and match different kinds of jeans, and they actually look pretty cool when they have patched it together, right? Yeah, so their way of contributing is to just simply recycle the garbages. That improves the environment. Okay, what else? They do experiments with the university students and with scientists. You know, they collaborate with them in order to come up with new ideas. They experiment in order to see how this material, the garbages, can be recycled and they are reusable. If they're toxic or if they have some problems, then you know you can't reuse them, right? So they experiment. So that gives opportunities for scientific development as well. You know, they develop ideas. They come up with new ideas for other people to use. And what else? They actually have put up a lot of YouTube videos. I did some research, and so if you just type up TerraCycle, you see a lot of YouTube videos. And so they give you you and me, just general public, some ideas as to how we can recycle and turn them to use for something good. So it's like two ways. One is you resolve garbage issues that harms the environment. Number two is you're actually making new products, like they add to your creativity, and you don't have to. And I'm sure that the products that are made out of garbages will be much cheaper than new products, right? And so, yeah, they're educating the public, and that's one great benefit or social good they're doing. All right, I want to. Okay, so let's just read. We don't have time to watch all the videos, but let's actually go one by one. Can you start reading examples of social issues being tackled by social enterprises? Graham and Ben.
Small loans to the poor or small business development and avenues.
Right. Those who are involved with finance before, you know, I know that in this room there are people who have worked in the financial sector. Graham Bank, it gives small loans to the poor for small business development. Small loans. So like loans, the amount is small and the interest rate is low. Okay. So what's the benefit of that? How does it benefit disadvantaged people? So how many of you have actually run a business? Nobody. Okay, that's fine. All right. So if you were to do a business, you need to have some money. So you cannot open a business without any money. You have to have some kind of money. Actually, it's a large portion that you have to. At first, you're not generating income. You have to set up your business, and it costs a lot of money. And therefore, many people, most likely, they don't have the financial support that they, in order to that is needed in order to set up the business. Then what do? They turn to a bank. And they do a lot of screening, and so sometimes you're disqualified. You're not able to get a loan. Okay, so people turn to loan in order to start their business. So because many people cannot afford to start the business on their own, they turn to loans, and the process of screening is so rigorous. Not everyone is qualified. Not many people are qualified.
Yes.
Then we need these banks who are willing to actually take a little bit of risk. You know, screening process is a little less rigorous, and then the interest rate. So have you used credit cards, right? Everyone, credit card. So if you don't pay back the entire amount, what happens? So you have certain, say, I don't know, $1,000, okay? And then you were not able to pay it off. Like you paid off only $200. Then $800. What happens to $800? Month after month accumulates interest. Like 25%, 30%. Yeah. So if you have $1,000, if you borrow $1,000 from by your credit card, after 1 month it's gonna be 1,300. Have you experienced that? And then the next month, 1,300 becomes the principal times 30%. Yeah. And then so like before you know it becomes like 3,000. Before you know it becomes 5,000. So poor people stay poor because of that, right? But then these banks that give them low interest rate, over time it'll be less damaging, and people have an easier time catching up, you know, by just paying back quickly because the interest is not much, right? And so Grandma Bank, they allow small loans to the core for small business. So, all these organizations that are charity organizations, they give food or they give clothes or whatever they have. It's good. But then sometimes it's like an endless pit because these people are going to remain poor for the rest of their lives. Now all they can do is to show up at the door and then just go for free food and free items. And maybe it's not a permanent solution. What is a better solution? Rather than giving them fish, you teach them how to catch the fish. Then they can be independent. Becoming independent is a high value. It's more important than just surviving day to day. Because what happens is after a while of being fed by someone else, like, okay, so I go to this place and this person gives me food and all I have to do is to show up there, then you don't have as much of self-value. Well, some people, that's the best they can do. But a lot of the people, you know, they have the healthy bodies and relatively healthy bodies and they can work, but opportunities are not given or they're not motivated. And so after being fed, they're like, oh, you know what? I'm just a person who go around just being fed by someone else. But if you allow them to start a small business, they start generating income, they have more independence, and they can try something that they want to do, and they're more motivated, and so they can plan for something greater. And this is a much better way of helping the disadvantaged over time. And this could be a permanent solution. One day their business goes well, they don't have to show up at your door asking for food anymore. Yeah. So that's what Grandma Bank contributes to. All right, we just talked about Greystone, and then how about D-Light? Can you read D-Light for us?
Design affordable solar-powered devices that provide an option to people that lack access to reliable energy sources.
Right. So have you seen those solar panels on the houses? Solar panels, right? So I think it's possible only in the sunny areas like California. This is a perfect place, right? And so there are actually cars that are fueled by solar energy as well, right? Or partially hybrid cars, right? Because regular electricity in some areas it's not stably provided. It's like on and off, and sometimes you don't have electricity, and so rather than doing that, the sun is almost always up in these areas, and so it's more reliable than you provide. It takes a lot of preparation, like it costs a lot in order to set up the solar energy system, but then once it has been set up, over time it recuperates. So after 10-20 years, then it's more beneficial. Does it make sense? And so it's costly upfront, but then in the end it's more beneficial. And so you Delight actually, and then so because the cost is great initially, Delight actually invests their money in order to make the price cheaper, so that it can be more affordable to disadvantaged people. Okay. All right. And how about dispensary of hope?
Dispensary of hope aggregates prescription medications that are nearing their expiration date and redistributes these drugs to free clinics in low-income communities. Clinics pay Dispensary of Hope a monthly subscription fee that covers basic expenses, and drug manufacturers save money by avoiding costs associated with destroying expired products.
Yeah. Oh, I happened to talk about prescribed medication this morning, right? Already. So, what's this company doing? Like, how is it beneficial? What it's doing? In two different ways, at least, right? So, it's buying off from the drug companies the medications that are close to expiration. Say this vitamin is going to expire in 90 days. So, most of the drugstores will not take them. Is that true? Because it's so close. Now, then they're sitting on the counters, sitting in the shelf. These drug companies, they're losing money because it costed money for them to actually make the products, but they're not sellable anymore, right? Then Dispensary of Hope buys them at a cheaper price, obviously, because they're not useful in the regular marketplace, and then they distribute them to the poor. So they want to make sure, okay, look at this expiration date. You have to take this before 90 days is over, something like that. So then these people still can benefit by cheaper medical costs. These days, medical cost is really high, you know, all the medicines and going to the hospital and things like that. It's really expensive. So it's really helpful for the poor if they can actually do this, provide medicine. And especially people with chronic illnesses, right? And then, so it's beneficial in both ways, right? It's helping the poor, and it's also helping the drug companies, pharmaceutical companies. All right, we talked about TerraCycle. Could you read Benetech?
Develops and use technology to create positive social change. One of Benetech's signature programs is book sharing. The largest literacy resources for people with disabilities. So I haven't actually done thorough research on Benetech, so so I don't know exactly what they do, but I've seen other examples. For example, certain companies actually, so in this case, they are using technologies like if you're blind or legally blind, you can't really read. In that case, maybe this company can produce like audio materials so that they can just listen to the material. Say students who need to go to college and they need to take the SAT exam, for example, then they can't really read what's on the screen, right, or what's on the paper. If the paper exams are still available, but in that case, then they have to hear audio material. Is that true? Then you need to have the separate material in order to read off the questions to you. And then it has to be connected to the system so that when the student wants to go back to the question, then it has to repeat itself, and so it has to be connected, right? And so, like, things like that. And so, people who are legally blind or just blind can benefit from this. I don't know what other ways that they can help. I've dealt a lot of with children with learning disabilities, and so some people, they're born with this condition, and
therefore they have a lower level of understanding. They can't, when they read the letters, kind of it doesn't make too much sense. And so what we need to do is we need to present pictures in order to describe the problems that they need to solve, or in order to explain concepts. So visual effect. And so it's more pictorial, and also you can use like graphics in order to help them visualize. Yeah. Say you're talking about Middle Eastern history, then books are not going to be helpful to them. And so you can come up with like a graphic design of how these countries, like the topography, of how these countries look like and where the big cities are, and in the cities, like what's happening. Historically, there have been certain events that occurred. It's like a 3D movie, watching a 3D movie in order to understand the history and things like that. And so these are very, very helpful. How about Warby Parker? Could you please read? Warby Parker.
Warby Parker partner with Business Spring enable access to affordable prescription glasses to people in developing countries who are otherwise functionally blind. They do this by selling fashionable eyewear to customers in developed markets and making a contribution for each pair sold.
Right. So in the less developed countries, people cannot really afford to buy any extra. So say in some, like I don't want to categorize countries, but let's just face the fact. In Africa, many of the countries, people are starving. Like maybe some top elite people are eating good meals and wearing good clothes, but and even drive cars, right? But then most of the population, they don't have enough to eat, and therefore eating 3 times a day is like it's a luxury. Okay, if you can eat every 2 days, every 3 days, that's enough. Like for some people that I've heard that are living in Africa, and so if you are like legally blind means you can see a little bit, but still not good enough to be able to read letters or drive. Okay? So they definitely need certain glasses, like very thick like glasses, prescribed glasses, and they can afford it. First of all, they're living in remote villages. There's no like optometrist nearby. Number 2 is you don't have the materials. Number 3, even if you have the materials, they're too expensive, right? And so what happens is Warby Parker actually, say United States and Canada and perhaps Korea and part of China too maybe, they sell more fashionable, like fashion eyewears, and they can be really pricey because of the brand or the quality, materials, the colors. Okay, they're for fashion purposes, and so actors, actresses, or even just regular people, they want to wear something fashionable and they're expensive, so they generate profit from that and invest into making like minimal, like not fashionable, just regular functional glasses for legally blind people in India and Africa and some other, like Southeast Asia, like where people need glasses, and so they distribute them. Is it pretty good? Especially children that are legally blind, they can now study. They can develop skills, and therefore there's a future for these little children. Yeah, so that's what Warby Parker is doing. All right, so in the last few minutes that we have, I want to kind of talk about, so we actually saw the examples. So what do they do? How are they actually different from regular business organizations? So you see corporate social responsibility, corporate social responsibility, multiple targets for social responsibility. So these social enterprises, they make themselves responsible for multiple stakeholders. Okay, any business organizations, if you have stocks, all right? So if you have like Apple stocks, right? Apple company is pretty big, and they have stocks, right? Stocks in the market, and they're automatically responsible for the stockholders. They need to compete well in the market so that their stock prices generally go up rather than drop. Not have that responsibility. They also have the responsibility to maintain their quality. Apple products are pretty stable, right? So they need to maintain good quality because they're responsible for the customers. Yeah? And then they're also responsible for their employees because you need to provide reasonable working environment and you have to compensate monetarily and you have to give them opportunities for development. They have to, over time, you don't want to